Good morning and welcome to the December 13th, 2023 meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. We have quite an agenda in front of us, but let's go ahead and do some introductions. And I'm going to ask us to do introductions long enough to hope that our special recognition guest shows up. So,
actually, Jim, he's here in the room with us.
oh, cool. I did not know that. All right, sweet.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So let's go ahead then with introductions of the board. I'm Jim Cooper from the City of Olympia. Greg,
Brotherton, Jefferson County.
Mike,
Mike French, Clallam County.
Dave,
Dave Tobin, Pacific County.
Joan. Joan, you're muted.
It's unusual. Joan Cathy, City of Tumwater.
Robin.
Robin Vasquez, City of Olympia. Or no, not City of Olympia. Wow, I'm just looking at Jim. I changed cities. Sorry, I'm Robin Vasquez, City of Lacey. Wow.
That was that annexation we did last night. Jill.
Yeah.
Hi, Jill Warney, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
Carolina.
Good morning, Carolina Mejia, Thurston County Commissioner.
Okay, I think I got all of the board. Jeff, can you introduce the staff?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. This is Jeff Johnston, Executive Director at ORCAA, and I'm joined here in the room by Dan Nelson, Communications Manager, Lauren Wybrew, Engineer 2, and also Mark Gooden, former ORCAA staff. We'll get to him in a few minutes. Also online, we've got Odell Hadley, our Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Lynn Harding, Financial Services Manager, and Debbie Moody, Office Manager. We've got Mike Schultz, Compliance Supervisor, and I believe Rob Weiland, Air Quality Specialist 2, and Chris Kraus, IT System Administrator, are also listening in.
Great,
I think
thank
that's it
you.
for staff.
Okay. And our other Jeff?
Jeff Myers, your legal counsel.
Great. All right, well, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I also move.
A second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any amendments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. So that takes us to a fun moment in our agenda. Some special recognition for Mark Gooden, who's been had quite the time and journey at the Clean Air Agency. I don't know, is there a way for us to see Mark, because he hasn't talked? He's not on the
wave your arms and talk, Mark. Testing. Hey, Al.
There we go. Okay, now we can see Mark. Okay, because I feel like if we're gonna roast you, we should at least be able to see your face while we do it, right?
Yeah. Good enough.
But just a couple of introductory comments for me, and then I'd love to open it up for the board if they have any comments or thoughts they want to pass on to Mark as he goes into the next stage of his non-working life now, and then if he has anything to tell us, we can do that as well. But Mark, I just want to say we appreciate you, and you know, this community and the region, I don't think they quite understand what you've helped do for communities across our footprint since May 5th of 1992. So more than 31 years with ORCAA. You've stamped over 2,200 permits in 6 counties. During that time, you've been writing permits. Air quality, the air quality in our region has gotten better. We all know we've gone from non-attainment to attainment and past the final throes of that, and that's really largely because of you and a couple of other key staff's leadership over that time. And that's about having well-written permits that actually regulate the outcome. And so that writing craft that you brought to the table is pretty special. You are our first professional engineer. When you were hired, our permits were being sent to Seattle for engineer stamps. So that doesn't seem like that long ago, actually. It's kind of wild to think about. Mark and ORCAA were recognized by the EPA for ORCAA being the first to get a Title V permit issued in Washington. Mark was an excellent mentor to many staff here at ORCAA across the community, the state. And I was just going to sit on that one for a second. When I first started, I quickly learned that Mark was the expert in burning wood waste in the region, and had really the best understanding of anyone about what the long-term air quality impacts were of burning wood waste versus wood waste sitting in the forest, and really educated me a lot as I came in right after the conversation about the waste to fuel facility at the Evergreen State College. Interestingly, I sat through, and I think this is really a huge moment. I sat through a presentation about the hydrogen facility in Lewis County the other day, and I realized why Greg keeps saying biochar, and we'll talk about that on another day. But the fuel for our clean energy economy that we're building is the fuel that you did that science about, and that's pretty significant. I didn't know that hydrogen was going to come from burning wood waste to make the energy. And I think the legacy that you're leaving us is that we have systems in place to monitor and pay attention to that, and make sure that the biggest concern around air quality that people have doesn't actually manifest over time. And you've helped us with that around small burning and big burning, and had a lot of leadership and experience in that space. And I say that because I feel like you've been a mentor to me, even though I'm the board member. I've been lucky enough to serve with you for a third of your career, and don't know that I would be still doing it if we didn't have the expertise that we have in you and our other, science and technical based staff members. So I think, I could keep talking because we've been doing this for a minute, but I want to open it up to other board members and see what they might have to say to really thank Mark for a great legacy and that he's leaving for our region. Greg?
Yeah, I think you did a really good job, Jim. I don't have a lot to add, but Mark, thank you so much for all your service. I was raised by two engineers, and I am not an engineer at all, but the quiet competence that you bring to your work was apparent from the first day I came to ORCAA, and it's part of the reason I have so much confidence in the work that ORCAA does is the approach that you bring, and the really data-driven engineering. It's laid out even at these kind of high level policy meetings. So I really appreciate your work, and I hope the next chapter in your life brings you as much reward as your work did here for ORCAA and for all of our counties. Thank you.
Others?
I'll just say thank you, Mark. Have a great retirement. But don't get lazy, because that's not good for you.
You got to keep the mind active.
That's right.
Thank you, Mark.
I haven't. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mark. 31 years is a great run. And, I haven't known you for a long time, but sounds like you've done really good things for ORCAA and our counties and our communities. And so thank you for that, and enjoy retirement.
Jill? Or sorry, Robin, go ahead.
Whoever I am, wherever I'm at.
What city?
Yeah, 31 years is a lifetime. That's amazing. And for an organization as small but mighty as ORCAA is, I'm sure that having the stability of somebody with 30 years of wisdom and institutional expertise has been really important, especially through transitions of executive directors and other staff. So thank you for your public service. Thank you for committing your time and energy and training to an organization that is doing so much good in our community for so long.
Randy, welcome. We're just doing some accolades to Mark on his way out the door to retirement. So Carolina?
Thank you, Mark. I don't think I can say much more than what's already been said. I think everyone has covered it very well enough, and I just really want to thank you for just the expertise, the knowledge, the wisdom that you always bring to these meetings, and educating all of us, and of course educating all of our communities as well. So just thank you. 31 years of service is absolutely incredible, and it's something to really be recognized. So just appreciate all that you've done.
Let's say a few words. Close it up.
Sure.
Let me just make sure there's no one else, Mark. Any other board members have anything to say? Okay, Mark, tell us where you're going.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
well,
I got a late taker. I can't let you go yet. Sorry, Joan.
Sorry, Mark, you were ready to tell us something. Well, while we have to stay here, you're going to go and do something grand. I just wanted to say, I came on and you got up and gave your reports, over a few months that I first came, and I thought, I don't hardly understand a thing this man is saying. But I loved how you said it. And I thought, I like this person. He's very smart. He's doing amazing things here, and he's kind, and he's gentle, and he's smart. And so just because of who you were, I listened more and I learned more. And I have appreciated the power of your presence in this organization, and in our meetings, and in my learning, and in my feelings toward who you are. So I'm grateful for you, and I'm hoping that whatever it is that you're going to do is exactly what you want to do. So thanks for everything.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank the board for this very long career, and ORCAA. I'm convinced that ORCAA does and continues to do the best job with the number of people that they have, and it's really a big job. And even especially since leaving ORCAA, it's become more and more apparent to me what a big job it is, keeping the air clean and not crossing from attainment status, which ORCAA enjoys now, to non-attainment, which brings on a whole bunch of different more rules, regulations. And so I think that ORCAA is a very unique agency because of the people, because of the board, where they could strike that balance of assuring compliance with the rules and regulations that apply, but be sensitive to business needs. So I trust that ORCAA is going to continue on in that fashion, and it's been a very fulfilling career. And so I just like to exit by saying thank you, and thank you for hiring me way back when. There were so many different faces, but I really appreciate the opportunity that I got back in 1992 to move up here to such a beautiful area with relatively good air quality and help maintain the air quality. So I know that staff and the board are going to continue on. And so I'd just like to say thanks.
Thank you, Mark. And, thanks for answering all my questions and along the way. And really, I think, thank you for the gift that you gave ORCAA, because, you could have retired much earlier than this if you wanted to. And the dedication to your craft and your desire to stay through the executive director transition is just really telling about your character. And thank you. Thank you for being a great public servant. And we can't wait to hear what you're up to as we hear from staff in the community as you're out playing around in the woods.
Yeah, I'm not going to disappear, and I've told that to all the ORCA staff, and so I may be present at board meetings, hearings as an observer, and I hope to see people at Thin River Cider or out in Balkan. I'm not moving, and everybody's got my phone number and email, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, and I'm going to head out.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you,
We
Mark.
can't stop you anymore.
We're going to
Mark.
hold you to having public comment from the public someday, being you. So we'll see you soon. Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark.
That brings us to our next agenda item, which is to look at the upcoming board meetings. And really, Jeff and I wanted to just chat particularly about the April meeting, because that's our annual meeting when we're supposed to do the, I believe, the chair and vice chair elections and maybe like the finance committee appointment, if I remember right. So I don't know. Am I turning it over to you, Jeff? And are we going to bring it up on the screen?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, Dan, if you could bring the document up, and then we'll just kind of talk through that briefly.
Okay, you wanted the
once you click on the agenda, and you can click to it from there. So right there. So you might have noticed that that Debbie and I did a little reorganization on this document, just hopefully making it a little bit easier to see. Again, it's our planning document. So the table at the top of the document now just has the things that where we've talked about, and but don't have a particular month on the agenda yet. For instance, at the top, been working with
Jeff. Yes. Just a sec. Dan, that must have opened in your browser, because we still see the agenda PDF.
Okay, let me. Okay.
There you go. Sorry. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Thanks for letting us know, Jim. So the top of this table just shows that Oli Map, Ty Gundel and Quinn Zichterman are going to come and give an update. You might remember that ORCA approved a small contribution to Oli Map's efforts in terms of managing homeless camps here in Olympia. And so, but at some point, so want to get Ty and Quinn here to give an update on that. That may be January, it might be a little bit later. But then the next item is potential board field trips. And so some ideas there. But as Jim said, we're looking at something in April. Last number of months ago, I think we had, as the board, decided that we wanted to meet in person at least twice a year. Again, recognizing the benefit of being able to meet virtually, especially given how big of an area we are, but also recognizing the importance of meeting at least occasionally in person. So we were thinking that the April meeting, which is the annual meeting of the board, could be a good opportunity to do that. Could have our usual meeting time from 10 a.m. here in the morning, and then sometime after that head a little bit south in Thurston County to Silver Springs Organics, which could be an interesting tour. So that's kind of what we were thinking. Jim, you mentioned the finance committee. Actually, I think the finance committee is appointed in February, so that won't be at the April meeting. But anyway, the document just kind of gives you an idea of what's coming, what we've got planned, and then on the second page is the meetings that have already happened. Just because it's, I don't know, helpful for me anyway to see, okay, what month did we talk about what? But we'll so that's how this document has been reorganized. So I guess I think Jim and I just wanted to update you that this is kind of what's coming, and see if folks are interested in doing a field trip in April. If so, we can start working on reaching out to Silver Springs and getting that set up. But wanted to check the interest in that.
Great.
Yeah, really interested in a field trip. Wondering, are we going to do it as an open meeting? So list it, and you're going to be at Silver Springs at this time. I mean, if we have a quorum, I think we do need to publish it. And then also wondering, I guess maybe if we should ask, I'm fine with the schedule as presented, but if we're going to have any turnover in the elected officials that serve on this board next year, if we anticipate that. I don't know. At some point, we might want to talk about it. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, Greg, on your second point, I think we talked about that last month, and we're not seeing anyone that's obvious. Granted that people could shift based on their board, and in particular, Thurston County went to 5 commissioners, so there's a shift there as the one possibility, and like Carolina might have something to say about that.
Yeah, it appears that I might be shifting. It will be confirmed early in January whether I will or not, but just as a FYI.
Okay. Yeah, and on the public meeting notice, Greg, we can see who will stick around after the board meeting and decide if that location will be noticed, if it's a quorum or not. Okay. Is that enough pre-time for you to get it on your calendars and plan to be in Olympia a little bit of extra time so we can go visit one of our sources? I think it's a great opportunity for us to just be together and not have a business meeting as well, or not have it be all business meeting. Okay. So maybe Debbie can send that appointment to us on that one and block out a little bit more time on our calendars, and that way we have it as a placeholder if she has the time to do that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. We can get something sent out in the coming days, just like I said, to block out a little bit more time for April. So, and just keep an eye on the other upcoming topics that we've got. So the January meeting, as you probably remember, or maybe remember from discussions in September or October, Lynn and I will be coming with a budget amendment because with all of the transitions, succession planning changes, we need to make a budget amendment. And so we laid that out just sort of broadly, I believe it was September, but we need to, so we'll be laying that out with both the finance committee and the full board in January, and then the hearing on that will be in February. So just as a heads up.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the calendar so far? Okay, so we will plan on that annual meeting. And then I think in January, we'll also talk about the calendar a little bit more, about more generative about what we'd like to see on next year's calendar. Is that right, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so then that takes us to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public online or in the room.
Okay, great. Anything electronic that we should know about, Dan or Jeff?
Nope.
No.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so then that takes us to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Is there any questions, comments, or polls? All in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the policies and procedures manual update. And I believe we're going to Jeff, but I didn't confirm that. So, okay.
Yes. Yeah. I'll take us through this. So just a reminder, the policies and procedures manual is our internal policy document, kind of just lays out how we run the agency. I did send an email out to you all on November 27th with an email that had just outlines the 4 general areas for changes that we were proposing. And then also sent out the Word document that Dan has up on the screen now with the marked up changes. And so I didn't hear anything from anybody in terms of questions or concerns. So I'm kind of going on the assumption that folks are generally okay with what we're proposing. Dan does have it up on the screen, so we can take a look at it if that would be helpful. But again, the idea is that these changes would be effective as of January 1. There are some additional changes that we would like to make, but I wanted to get some of these done quickly. So didn't want to wait till we had everything ready. So, yeah, so Dan, why don't you scroll up to the very top of the document, please? So how would you like to proceed with this?
Yep. Jeff, can you just, before you open it up, just cover the high level bullets that you were in your most recent email? Because I think that was just really just the major shifts that happened in the document. So we have it on the record.
Sure, absolutely. So on page 2, there's just added some language to clarify the executive director's authority regarding maintaining operating the agency to maintain health and safety of the staff and the public. And then also just a reminder to staff that there's an expectation that folks review this as needed or certainly annually. So that's the initial review or an initial change. Then on page 12, there's some edits to remove some outdated practices around the Safety and Accident Prevention Plan, or the agency SAP. Really just removing the specific language in here and pointing at the Safety and Accident Prevention Plan as the primary document that the agency looks at. So that's that. Then on page 32 and 33, there's changes to ORCAA's vacation leave accrual. So currently, leave accrues annually. So on your anniversary month, you get a big block of days, depending upon how long you've been with the agency. Whereas most agencies, including state agencies, you accrue monthly. And so this is just kind of getting ORCAA's policies in line with most other agencies so that you accrue your leave monthly rather than annually. The extras, you always accrued your day a month, you got that per month, but the extra days only came annually. And then it's annually that you, and then people were bumping up against the maximum and losing some time. So again, anyway, this just seems like a better way to manage it to me and brings us in line with how other agencies are doing it. Again, there's no changes to how the amount of leave that's being accrued. It's just a matter of when you actually get to use it. So that was the third major area. And then the fourth major area was in pages 61 and 63 of the manual, as well as the appendix pages G and K, related to the agency purchasing policy. Again, purchasing policy hadn't been updated in quite a while, and working closely with Lynn and others, these changes just will help make us for a smoother purchasing process. We increased the thresholds on that a bit, and just we've had some challenges with some recent purchasing, and so just some additional language and clarifying things that make it a little bit, hopefully will make it a little bit better. The specific things we did, we explained that there's a different process for goods and services as opposed to public works. As I mentioned, increased the thresholds. And then also inserted some language to help us move forward in case of no bids for a purchase. We came across that when we were purchasing a vehicle a few months ago. So we put out a bid, no bid. So then what do we do? So this will help address that.
I got a question on that one, Jeff. Robin?
I'm just curious how long it's been since we updated the thresholds for purchasing, because we did something similar during the Intercity Transit Authority meeting last week, and it had been like 15 years since the thresholds had been increased, and they were way, way behind. So I'm supportive of this. I'm just curious how long it's been.
Lynn or Debbie, can you chime in? I don't know how long it's, my guess it's been a number of years, but I doubt it's been 15, but maybe.
Hi, here, Lynn here. Sorry, I don't have a camera able to show my smiling face deal. But when I came here almost 21 years ago, I don't recall seeing a purchasing policy. So this purchasing policy kind of came with me. And so it's been, we're going to beat you there, Robin. It's been over 20 years. How's that? But
Clearly
it's definitely time.
So should we put a CPI on these numbers in the policy?
I'd rather not, Mr. Cooper.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Jeff?
No, I don't think so. So I think just open it up for questions. One thing, so Jeff Myers submitted a question yesterday in terms of whether we want to stick with the just questioning the $75,000 threshold for formal bidding. Lynn and I talked about that a little bit. We're comfortable at that level. We could raise it a bit, but we don't see with the agency, we're not like a city or county that does a lot of contracting at higher than that level. We've got a few things that Lynn and I were thinking, like, you know, probably put a new roof on the building in the coming years. That hopefully won't be over that $75,000. We'll be putting solar on the roof. That will be. So, I mean, there's a few things coming up, but we're comfortable with the $75,000, but we look to the board. I mean, what's your recommendation or your thoughts on this?
Questions or thoughts?
What are the state mandated requirements, and are we following like we would for our own agencies?
Good question. Yeah, and Kurt, and thank you for that. That's a good question. You know, ORCAA actually doesn't have its own requirements through the state in terms of bid limits, competitive processes. So the state relies on each agency that doesn't have a requirement to have its own policy in place. And so this is what we've looked at other agencies, cities, counties, special purpose districts. And yes, we have unbelievably low original thresholds. We up them, increase them to reduce the administrative burden. We have not reached the minimum requirements that is probably recommended for our agency size, but in consideration of, you know, risk and accessibility of process, I feel, Jeff feels, and our attorney, Jeff Myers, has also provided his input. So, and to answer your question specifically, just for public works, we could have a threshold of $350,000 instead of $75,000. And, you know, conversations with Jeff Johnston, we just felt that it wasn't necessary to go that high because we don't feel the need that it's going to be used very often. And once we reach a threshold anyhow, we're going to be going to the board to review as well and look if it's not already in our budget. Probably a little bit more information than asked for, but
no, it's good. Jeff Meyer.
Yeah, I think Lynn covered the threshold question, and that the state law does not establish one for air agencies, and relies on you to adopt this. So you have a great deal of discretion as to where to set those thresholds. You can go up to $350,000 to use the small public works roster, and that is effective. I believe it is January 1, going to be the MRSC will have that available for all local government agencies to use. So you could take advantage of that. The issue really with setting the threshold between using the small works roster or formally bidding is you commit yourself to a formal bid process. This does not set a question of what needs to go to the board for approval or what can be approved administratively. It's a question of what process do you have to go through before the contract is awarded to the successful bidder, and then that's to select the vendor, and then the board can set its own threshold for what things have to come before the board for board approval, as opposed to having the executive director approve things. So and you have a great deal of discretion in this regard, and so just wanted to set that framework.
Thank you. Other thoughts or questions?
And really, can I add something, Mr. Cooper?
Yeah.
Is that we're one of two air agencies in the state that actually, where the Public Works projects applies to, because there's only one other agency besides ORCAA that owns their own building. So that's where the extra layers of the laws come in for administration of the prevailing wage to Public Works, and to have these separated out, as Jeff mentioned earlier, is really important and helpful administratively. So thanks for your support, all.
Yeah, good add-on. Thank you. Okay, I'm not hearing a lot of questions. So, and I feel like I really appreciate the reminder this week from Debbie and the synopsis from Jeff to just make sure we all are on the same page about what's included in this document, and then seeing it on the screen. I feel really comfortable with it. So I appreciate the work and understand, and just to repark the caveat that if we act now, we'll still have another set of amendments sometime early next year, but just not as timely as these ones. So,
right.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve as presented, if there is one.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion in 2 seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Jeff. That was good work.
Mr. Cooper, Lynn here.
Lynn, yes.
Can we have an effective date of these changes, please?
I don't know, we just passed it, so this minute?
I would suggest, so if we may suggest an effective date, as I said a few minutes ago, of January 1, 2024, that will give us some time, particularly around the leave accrual. We've got some accounting, some things to get in place. So I would suggest a effective date of January 1.
So then I move that the effective date of the previous motion be January 1 of 2024.
Second.
Robin, second that one.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sorry to do a motion as the chair. It just felt like it would keep it moving. So, and I'm allowed. So, just kidding. Okay, great. So that then takes us to the ORCAA records update, and I think that Debbie is giving this presentation.
Actually, I think I'll be giving it. This is Jeff.
Sorry.
With some help from Debbie chiming in as she sees fit. But Dan, if you could launch the slides, please. So while Dan's bringing that up, let me just give a little context of sort of why this is on our agenda. So you might remember that ORCAA's fiscal year 2023 budget, so the budget that started on July 1 of 2022, included a new agency position, a records clerk, to work closely with Debbie and Jackie and others to make progress on organizing agency records. So we filled the position in December of last year, about a year ago, and Tiffany Flores, just up to slide 1, please. Tiffany Flores joined us from Department of Ecology and immediately got to work helping to get our records in order. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk a little bit about. But in addition to updating you on the work that Tiffany did, wanted to share that Tiffany, a month or so ago, decided with her family to relocate back down to Northern California. So actually last Tuesday was Tiffany's last day in the agency. So originally this was going to be Tiffany giving the presentation, but unfortunately she's no longer with us. So you've got me instead kind of summarizing the work that she has done along with Debbie and Jackie and others. So again, when I started, it was pretty clear that there was more attention needed on records. Basically, Debbie and Jackie were dealing with records only when they could find a bit of time here and there, but the agency had gone many years without doing really extensive logging of the records. So next slide. So this just shows a picture of Debbie's office, what it looked like when I started. There was a lot of boxes in Debbie's office, things that she had logged for destruction, but just hadn't gotten around. Again, just no dedicated time to really make progress. So when Tiffany started last December, she was tasked with verifying the content of boxes, and then in February we had LeMay picked up 23 boxes for shredding. So Debbie's office now looks a lot different than that. So next slide. Another thing that Tiffany worked on was looking at the grants, the records grants that are available from the Secretary of State. And so there's folks, you all might be familiar with those. It's a really great program. We decided last year that we weren't quite ready to apply for one of those, just in terms of the technology and tools. Since we're also going to be updating our agency database, we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves with the records. We wanted to tie that in with the larger database project. But we do have an application that Tiffany started to fill out. And so at some point when we decide the time is right, we will be applying for some grants to help with our records work. Okay, next slide, please. So, in April, Tiffany started scanning documents. So we had them electronic so that they're more readily accessible, both for staff here in the office or staff working remotely, either in their home office or in the field. And this just shows some of our records. Let's see. And Debbie, please jump in at any point if I'm missing any critical points. So the next slide. So our AOP files are a big source of our records. So typically these are very large files, and we only have space for 5 years worth of records in the file area that were shown on the previous slide. So in September, as part of an effort to relocate our records room, we purchased 6 lateral files, and we're working to get those filled with the older air operating permit files, and that will just make them generally more accessible. And this was part of an effort to relocate our records room. Go on to the next slide, please. So imagine this picture, but with boxes of all around the edges of the room there. We've moved them into a new location, and that was freeing up that room that you see in that slide for, as the agency grows. The engineers are actually going to move into that room. We're going to reconfigure it, put some cubicles in there. And so then the next slide shows what our new records room looks like with the new lateral files, or the lateral files we picked up from state surplus, and just makes the files more accessible and room to get organized. All right. Let's see, all right, next slide. So we do still have a lot of work to do. There's long-term records, personnel files, other financial records that have long retention schedules that still need some work. And so we're working on getting those organized. We're also getting ready to send things to state archives. So the next slide. So we've got boxes there, and that will be heading down there. And then the next slide, we did another purge just about a month ago. So in addition to the, I think, 23 boxes that were shredded back this spring, last month we sent another 26 boxes of records that had passed their retention value. And so again, creating a lot more room. So, and again, just to put that in perspective, prior to February, when we did our first purge, or when we destroyed our first records, the last time we had been able to shred anything was 2010. There just hadn't been the time to go through and do the kind of dedicated work that Tiffany was able to do. So she really made a huge difference. And if you go on to the next slide, So this just shows some next steps in our records work. Working with Debbie to look closely at the job description for the records clerk position. I think, Frank, we're going to expand it a little bit, add some additional duties, perhaps even moving it to include the public records officer role. Not sure. We're still looking at that. But we've got a lot more scanning to do and more organizing to do. So still a lot of work to do, but thank you for giving us that additional position in the fiscal year 2023 budget. We've made a lot of progress on agency records. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And at this point, open it up for any questions.
Questions for Jeff?
Or Debbie?
Doesn't it feel good to purge?
Yes. I know Debbie and Tiffany and others were having, there was celebration. There were parties when the LeMay shredding truck showed up. You feel a lot lighter.
Yeah.
Does that give you another office to rent?
Perhaps, or more room for our growing staff.
Right. Robin?
I think it's, worth pointing out that records management is really important for an agency that does this kind of work. And even as you're archiving, you're purging old records that don't need to be retained, it actually makes you better at being able to respond to public records requests, because as you're organized, you can respond faster because you know where things are. Like records management helps with transparency of public agencies. So being able to get caught up on some of this stuff is really valuable, both for the organization and for the public. So I appreciate all the work that was done.
Thank you.
Good job. That's a great load lightning. So not hearing anything else before we move into the space of trying to write oh, go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say, good job. And those are jobs, like Jill says, make you feel good, but it's a lot of work. And it made me feel a little nervous or spooky or something when I saw all those boxes stacked up. I've been seeing that on TV over the last year or so. Boxes all stacked up and all over the place. So I'm glad you're not reminding us of the dangers of having stuff in boxes and moving them around room to room. So good job, Jeff. It's very good.
Thank you for not putting them in the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not in the bathroom.
And I just feel the need to clarify in this moment that ORCAA does not have a legislative privilege policy or anything like that. So we are fully transparent anytime the public asks for a record.
Good.
Indeed,
within the law.
They are.
Great. Okay. So let's move on to the compliance manager update. It must be Mike because I don't see Robert, even though his name's on the agenda.
Yep. Last minute substitution. We've got Mike in here today.
I'm like 0 for 3 today. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I'm glad you recognized me as not being Robert. No offense to Robert, he wouldn't want to be recognized as me. So yes, we will move forward. You guys have the packet that has the compliance stuff. It's some of the lists are a little bit longer since it's been 2 months of material of complaints and outdoor burning and whatnot. Happy to answer questions on those. But I'll go over 3 quick little things that are coming up or that have happened, and start with the first, which is you guys will see the board will see I think it's in January, a request for a small regulation change that Robert's been working on, along with staff. It's going to basically just clarify which gas stations we inspect. There's a handful of small, less than 50,000 gallon throughput a year ones that we currently do register and will spend time on that. They're so small that they're usually PUDs or maybe municipalities that they use for their, or maybe a transit company may use it for a few vehicles. So those real small ones, we're going to clarify that, and reduce those registration issues there. So that I think will be brought forth in January, I believe, by Robert. A bit of two more items, the good news items. One is cooperation with Mason County on a large pile burn that was going on for a while with the source up there. We just kind of, I see Randy's there to thank the Mason County people. We had fire department, Mason County, the fire marshal for Mason County, environmental health for Mason County, and ORCAA all worked together on a site that had a large pile burning. And it's difficult to put a large pile of woody debris out because you got to treat it in a sensitive way so you don't just add a bunch of oxygen, pull it apart, and flare it up. There's a lot of different things that have to be done to it. And we were getting complaints, odor and smoke complaints from it. So it was just a good story that all those groups I mentioned got together. We worked with this facility and we were able to meet the requirements of ORCAA along with solid waste and environmental health and the fire marshal requirements. So it was a good cooperative, multi-agency type task, and I'm hoping that it's out for good. And it was a self-combusting fire. It wasn't, started in any bad way or anything. It just, those things happen once in a while. And in this case, it took a lot of parties, but yeah, just a good cooperation with Mason County. It's nice to have those opportunities. And then finally, the good news for compliance is that Aiden Palm, he comes from DNR, but he will be coming to ORCAA on January 1st as an air quality specialist 1. So he'll be a new employee. Looking forward to having him. He's got a lot of experience in outdoor burning. As I've just mentioned the burning stuff before, being with DNR, comes to us with, I think, eagerness, good smarts, willing to learn. Was in the Army, did some technical stuff. Then he also did some IT stuff. So he's got that experience. Like I said, customer service with dealing with people on slash burns and DNR burns. So I think he'll fit really well with our group, and we're looking forward to a couple more weeks to get him started and going. So those are my three quick little things. Again, the packet and the stuff in there. If you guys have questions on any compliance issues or things, I'll try to answer those.
Questions for Mike? Go ahead, Mike.
Not a question, but a property that I think we had a complaint on in previous months out in Clallam Bay in Clallam County. Our code enforcement environmental health team did a pretty big cleanup on that site, so I think that we won't probably receive any more complaints on that. That was Wheel Road out in Clallam Bay, so that's probably good news for us.
That is good. And if when I'm mentioning the specific for Mason County, yeah, we work with a lot of the other counties environmental health stuff, and when we hear stories like that, that's always a plus, because sometimes people want to clean it up based on the county saying clean up this solid waste issues, and their first response is, well, okay, I'll burn it out in the backyard, and then we come into play. And so yeah, we work with them well, and talking to people up in Clallam County quite often, and I'm glad that Wheel Road one is taken care of. And the more of those we can get, the better I think it is for the counties, the cities, and for ORCAA, because yeah, communities like to see those kind of things cleaned up. So that's nice. Appreciate the update.
Yes, it was 50 tons of solid waste off of one property. So
wow, that's a lot. Wow. So yeah, that's why they want to burn it, the costly thing to do otherwise. But we don't want them to do that. So appreciate you guys getting them to clean it up appropriately. So thank you.
Okay, not seeing it. Oh, Dave, go ahead. No? Okay.
Nope.
Sorry. Your box turned green. I thought you started to talk, so no worries. Okay, so that then takes us to Lauren, who's our agency engineer. So give us the engineering report.
Yep. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm one of the engineers that worked under Mark. I've been here about 10 years. So I think, do you want to share, does Mark usually share the screen of the board packet, or do you guys have a board packet in front of you? I don't know what the normal protocol is.
We all have it.
Okay. So I'll go ahead, and about the first page and a half is actually permits that went out the door, just because this report generated back to early October. But the ones I wanted to highlight weren't actually ones that went out the door, unless of course anyone has questions, but the ones that I wanted to highlight are about halfway down the second page, Alta Forest products. So we currently right now have 2 permits that are out for a 30-day public comment period. This is one of them, Alta Forest products. This is in Mason County, just south of Shelton, off of Highway 108, for people who are kind of familiar with the area. They're an existing facility and are wood products, but they are expanding and putting in extra flow coating lines. Or I think it's coating fence boards, but don't quote me on that. But it's such a large expansion that ORCAA is issuing what's called a synthetic minor order for volatile organic compounds, which will put a voluntary limit that's requested by the applicant on their potential to emit for VOCs so that they don't trip into the Title V or AOP program. So that that action automatically triggers the 30-day public comment period. To date, I don't believe we've received any comments yet, but that's still active, so we could before it's over. The second one we have out is Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy, which is kind of midway down page 4. That's our second permit that we currently have out for a 30-day public comment period. It's possible Mark has highlighted this to the board in past meetings,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
okay.
He has definitely mentioned it, and we've talked a little bit about it.
Okay, perfect. And this is the proposed pellet mill out at the port of Grays Harbor in Grays Harbor County. ORCAA, Mark has issued a preliminary determination for recommended conditions of approval to conditionally approve that facility. I say preliminary because this is out for 30-day public comment period. We are also having a public hearing at the City of Hoquiam Municipal Court on January 16th. And then the 30-day public comment period will end 2 days after that on the 18th. That case has been handed off to me since Mark's departure. To date, I haven't received any comments since we put out the posting. I believe it was just last Friday. So there is still a lot of time though, since that'll run all the way to January 18th. We say 30-day public comment period, but oftentimes just for logistics reasons and because it's the holidays, we allow, if we can, we put out more time. And then the third one, I'm being sneaky here. It's actually not on the board report because we received the application, I think just the day after this report was generated mid last week. But the third application we just received was from AGP, also in Grays Harbor. And it's for a fairly large expansion reconfiguration of rail and shipping and commodity transport out of the Port of Grays Harbor. I'm highlighting it more just because that is with Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy and this expansion of AGP, we're seeing a lot of growth at the Port of Grays Harbor.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So with that, if anybody has any questions about those 3 cases or anything else on the board report.
Questions for Lauren? I just want to check in and see. I have city council on the night of the public hearing, but I think this is a big enough one that it'd be worth making sure we have a board member at least listening. Jill, are you free that night and able to be at the public hearing?
I was thinking that I would like to attend that, but what was the night again? January what?
It is January 16th. I believe, Dan, double check me, 6:30 p.m.
Yeah,
is the start
Tuesday
time.
the 16th.
And it'll be at the City of Hoquiam Municipal Court. And we can also send those details to you via email if that's easier.
Yes, I will plan on going.
Okay.
Yeah, and if something happens, will you let us know and we'll see if we can get someone else out there from the board, just because I think it's really good to have one of us there to help support the staff through that process.
I agree. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and if I can just chime in, so remember that I think it was October, approved a resolution appointing me as the hearing officer. So I will be the hearing officer at this at the upcoming hearing.
Good. Is that your first one?
It'll be my first hearing, my first ORCAA hearing. Yes.
Well, I guess we should all try to go then. Cool.
The more the merrier.
Jeff says no.
Yeah, right. No notice, no public notice. Okay, so any other comments for Lauren or questions? Okay, thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it, and congratulations on your position.
I've just got one thing, just wanted to add to what Lauren was saying, and just a reminder that again with Mark's departure, so we're now down to 3 engineers. We've got Lauren, we've got Aaron Manley, and Jennifer DeMay, and so the team is very busy. We've got a lot of applications coming in, a lot of things that we're processing. And so I'll be working closely with the engineering supervisor, Jennifer DeMay, and our new, which I'll talk in a few minutes about other hiring that we're doing, but the new compliance manager. So we'll be working in early 2024 to fill another engineering position just because we've got a need. But in the meantime, just appreciate all the work that Lauren and the rest of the team are doing to keep all the high priority projects moving forward.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay, and thanks for the report, Lauren. Okay, so then let's go to Odell for monitoring. You're muted, Odell.
Now?
Yep, got you.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen. We want to do presentation, not whole screen. All right. Can you see that? Okay. So I'm covering 2 months since we didn't have a board meeting last month. So this is the October air quality summary for all of our counties, mostly good in all the counties. Shelton, well, cities. Shelton, we did see 2 moderate days in October. And then you'll notice we had some data loss in Port Angeles and Port Townsend. Port Angeles, we had a pump seize up, and we do QCs, automated quality checks at the sites every 2 weeks. And so it's possible that sometimes these things can happen and we don't notice them right away because the data continue to stream. We just don't realize that a critical component has failed. So we caught that, and Rob had to go up and figure out what's going on. And then, so it took a little bit of time to get that resolved. Port Townsend, we had a communication failure, which resulted in the loss of 2 days of data from when we realized it until when Rob could get up there and reset that connection. So that one was resolved pretty quickly. We also have a member of the public in Port Townsend that's paying very close attention to our monitors and has let both ourselves, ORCAA, and Ecology know when the communication goes down. So we can catch that a little bit more quickly too. Nice to have public watching and making sure our things are working. November, similar, we still had, as you can see, we still had quite a lot of data loss in Port Angeles, and that was still due to that pump seizing up and getting out there and getting a new pump. We had to order a new pump to replace that. So, and then Port Townsend, again, we had some communication issues, and we were able to reset the modem 1 trip up there and then 1 remote start. And Rob just combined that with his usual inspections up there. So that's one of the really great things about having Rob back me up on monitoring is he doesn't have to make a trip out to Port Angeles or Port Townsend solely to push a button or reset a monitor. He can combine that with other work for ORCAA. So that is just another increase in our efficiency by changing that role for him. Other monitoring news, we had a few more trips to Chesapeake to finalize our upgrades there. Continued to have some issues with small leaks around a new inlet, but we verified that that's been fixed during the last visit. We installed some stairs and we passed a state audit of all of our equipment, which is great. I already mentioned the Port Angeles pump maintenance, and we also had a new nephelometer installed out there. I forgot that was one of the other issues that we were having. It was sort of a breakdown of a lot of things. And I mentioned the Port Townsend site visit. We also ran the quarterly on-site quality check there. Did one in Shelton and Lacey. And we removed the seasonal ozone monitors from the Lacey monitoring site, although we still do have our backup ozone monitor that belongs to ORCAA that's running full year round at Lacey. And then finally, the big exciting news is we also got through the IRA funding through EPA. We asked for a new ethylometer at the Lacey site, and that was approved. It was purchased for ORCAA by Ecology, and we got that installed at the site. And the ethylometer measures a component of PM 2.5, which is black carbon or soot, and it can help us really isolate the sources of the PM 2.5, especially combustion related. So here are a couple of pictures. The finalized site here at Chesapeake with our Met Tower fully extended, all of our inlets, the new stairs going up so we don't have to crawl up into the trailer. It's just looking really nice up there, really clean. And I just got word that if you remember, there's an FAA site right above that Dan showed some pictures of, and maybe on the drone footage. They have asked the macaw to log around this site because the trees are getting tall enough that it's interfering with their communication. So these trees that you see around our site, they actually are going to be logging up around our site next summer, which sounds sad, but actually might improve our communication and some other issues that we're having up there too. And we'll get our view of the ocean back. So trying to find the silver lining in this activity, but we'll also be trying to plan around the logging activity and minimize our trips up there while they're doing that. So yeah, keep tuned for word of that. And then here's just a picture of the current inside. You'll notice we still have some bags on top of one of the analyzers. That's where we were getting some leaks, but that has been resolved. So that looks a little bit cleaner and nicer in there.
What's the name of that new staff member by the stairs?
Oh, that is Sky. Sky belongs to Olivia, who is a UW student, and he always comes up with her constant companion. So he's been, whenever she's up there with us, he's kind of a fun addition to our group.
Cool. Thank you.
And then the Lacey Mountain View ethylometer installed. Dan came out to take some pictures. This is our new analyzer. This is Rob and I on the roof trying to figure out what we want to do and how to install this little inlet that we're working on up there. This is the screen in the front, and then over here is what the inside looks like. So the air gets pulled through and it deposits on this filter paper, and then the color of that filter paper changes, and it changes the light that's shining through that, and that attenuation of light through the paper is what gives us a black carbon signal. And this ethylometer has 7 wavelengths of light, so 7 different colors of light, and gives us a spectral absorption. If I'm going too sciencey, I apologize. But what that does is that allows us to look at the difference between soot produced by diesel exhaust versus a wood stove. So here's an example. The yellow line is the total particulate matter in micrograms per meter cubed. And then down below here, the blue line is the amount of UV light that's being absorbed by that filter. And the red line is the a longer infrared or near infrared light being absorbed. When these two lines are on top of each other, that is indicative of diesel exhaust or very, very black soot. When the blue line is about twice as much as the red line, that's very indicative of a low temperature burn or what you would expect to find coming out of a wood stove. So this is one very simple explanation of how we can use this data to differentiate where our particulate matter combustion sources are coming from. So that is all I have on the monitoring for the last 2 months, unless you guys have any questions.
Robin?
Odell, on that graph that you just showed us, it spans a day. So yeah. at the beginning of a day, it shows us more maybe wood stove product, right? And then at the end of the day, it's showing like diesel exhaust. Is that people lighting their wood stoves in their houses in the evening and then trucks driving in the morning?
Well, so so this 12-1 right here, where you see the gray line in the middle, that's actually midnight. Right. So this data is from when we installed the ethylometer starting on 11:30. And you'll see in that afternoon that we had, it was also a very cold, still stagnant day. We had some air pockets of stagnation, and actually we installed it a few days earlier, but I was having trouble getting it communicating with our data logger. And I was really annoyed because this high level of PM 2.5, it was actually coming down. You can see it was much higher. And I knew I was missing some really good data on those days, but this was the point at which I was able to finally get that thing communicating with the data logger. And then, so what you see here is this weather system moving in answer to your question. So we had high stagnation. It was very cold. People were burning in their wood stoves. Then you can see that overall the particulate matter came way down and then cleaned out the air. And most of what we were seeing left was from vehicles.
Okay, so it's not only changes in behavior, like what people are doing, but it's also movement of air that is resulting in these pickup differences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, sorry, my answer was probably longer than it needed to be, but it takes me a minute to zoom in.
Okay. It makes me want to look at that data during some of these dense fog days we've had in Olympia in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination, right? So you could have the dense fog, but maybe it's not that cold or people aren't burning. And so, yeah, it's not always what you expect, but if you look at a large number, the statistics usually bear that out.
Any other questions for Odell? Just a nerdy one. How long does that filter tape last in the machine?
It depends on how dirty the air is. So it changes every time the light attenuation reaches a certain value. So it may not change if in really clean air, that filter may not advance to another spot for 2 or 3 days. And then if it's really, really dirty, then it might advance 4 times in 1 day. So hard to say.
Well, that's cool. So it knows how much it's catching and it gives you a clean spot as it needs to. Okay.
Yes, because the signal starts to decrease if it gets too loaded. And so when it hits that linear, where the linearity of the signal starts to go away, it moves to a clean spot.
Thank you for indulging me.
No problem.
Appreciate it, Odell. Okay, Dan for communications.
Okay, so I shared with you a report and some fun news in the form of letters from high school students. More good news out of Mason County. I was able to work with the Shelton School District. The science program or science teachers there asked me to come and do some presentations for their earth sciences classes, and they were doing some air programming and had just talked about Mount St. Helens and wanted to talk about ambient air and monitoring and whatever we wanted to talk about. So we had a chance to get into the classroom and talk to kids, share the work ORCAA does. I shared some of my experiences living through the St. Helens eruption and shared some volcanic ash with the class that I collected in Eastern Washington way back when I was in high school. So that was a really good experience, and it led to the science and technology teachers to ask me to be part of their advisory committee and help set some curriculum in the future, working with Shelton School District and others in Mason County. And then I'm also working with my colleague Gretchen at EPA. She's done a lot of outreach over the years to schools. And so we're going to work with the Northwest Air Quality Communicators Group and try to meet with the state science educators groups and see if we can't draft some voluntary curriculum ideas for schools throughout the state so that we share messaging and have consistent messaging about air quality for all the science program. So that's something that's in the works. I don't expect to see that happen overnight, but hopefully this spring and summer, Gretchen and I can meet with those educators at their annual meeting later in mid 2024 and talk about some potentials there. So, but I did want to share those letters. It was really nice to come in a couple days after I was in the classrooms, and I did 2 classes and then had lunch with all the science teachers. but to come in and have 20 or 30 or 40 letters on my desk from kids thanking us for attending. And there are some really interesting questions from the classes. One nice thing, the teachers required that every student ask me a question. They had to write out some questions, and everybody had to ask a question. Some of them were the basics that you might want to, or you might expect, of how much I make and what kind of schooling I had. So I shared my diverse schooling and my hiking background. And so that led to some other questions and how hiking and air quality are related. So it was some really good discussion. So it was actually a lot of fun. And I think there was a couple kids that followed up later in the day and that caught me on my way out and asked about how they could get involved with air quality and share more information. So really good. So thank you, Randy, for having such interesting kids in your community.
That's cool. Good job, Dan. Mr. Nelson, I think we're calling you from here on out.
Mentioned working with the Northwest Air Quality Communicators on the curriculum. I'm also working with them on, and I've mentioned this in the past, it's been a slow slog, but we are hoping to send out a request for proposals out of the communicators group for a resource sharing service. So essentially asking all the local airs, the state air agencies, Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and maybe even some of our partners in British Columbia, each chip in a little bit of money and try to develop some resources that we can share and bolster all of our social media, our outreach, our coordinated messaging on things like wildfire smoke education and asbestos and demolition education and wood stove use education. So we all have a lot of similar projects. We have things we all have in common. It just makes sense for us to all have the same message, especially in social media. We all have fairly small social media audiences, but when we combine, we can amplify our message to a much bigger body out there if we all work together and all are saying the same thing. So we've done that with our wildfire or our smoke ready week in early June each year, where we share same tweets or X's or whatever they're called today, and Facebook posts and Instagram posts. So we have volunteers at Ecology and Idaho DEQ and some counties in Oregon enlisted their graphics departments to put together things we shared. We want to make that a more permanent thing and make it easier. So we're looking to find a contractor that can provide not only a repository where we can share resources, but also some content creation for us. So we can go to them and say, I really need a good campaign on wood stove recycling. Get me some graphics and we'll share them with Puget Sound Clean Air and Northwest Clean Air. Because we're all in the same market, we all have the same program. And so that's in the works. Let me get back to my notes. And I shared a link in that document for our website redesign work. We were featured in our contractors blog. They did a update or just a note case study about ORCAA and how our website redesign helped us. I shared our number of calls. We got pre-site and post-site relaunch, and we've seen the number of calls drop precipitously. Again, the same company did work with Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency, and now they're potentially working with Benton County over in Eastern Washington too. So they are looking to become the Clean Air Agency webmasters. So they've got the expertise and they're a great company to work with. So just wanted to share that case study they posted. And then our wood stove program is really taking off. I've got, as of this morning, I think I've got 40 approved projects and 23 or 24 have come in final already. And it's been less than a month since we actually had the contract signed and finalized with the state. So we're seeing a lot of response from all of our counties on that as well. So
Nice.
That's it for me. If you want to see more of those letters, stop by the office and you can read through them.
Questions for Dan? Dan, I just want to let you know something about the PDF. That link's not clickable or copy pastable. So if you can send it to us so we can look at the case study.
I'll do that.
At your convenience. And then it sounds like you have the makings of a clean air club at the school. And I don't know if I've ever heard of that, but it'd kind of be a really cool concept.
So one of the big things we're looking to do is we have in the budget this year a purple air lending library. And some of the things, it turns out EPA has a purple air lending program as well. And they really target community groups and kind of the community at large. So I think if we use EPAs for some of those community and neighborhood associations, we can use our future purple air lending library as an education tool and try to get them into schools is what I'm hoping. And Shelton High School was very excited about the possibility of putting at least one purple air on their building. And I'm thinking one inside for indoor air quality to compare with outdoor air quality. So
that's really cool. Thanks for that add-on. Okay. Let's go to Lynn for financial and operations and building stuff.
All right. Yes. Well, good morning all again. Yeah, I'm still not able to show my face, but I'm real. So, so a couple updates. So the financial specialist position, I'm very excited about this. So we feel that we have a good number of applications as of this report. The position will remain open, obviously, until we fill it. However, we plan to review applications next week, and we hope to start interviewing by the end of December, no later than the beginning of January, with a start date of no later than February 1, 2024. Sounds really far away, but I know that Jeff is planning on providing you an update on the other positions. And then on the building, yes, ORCAA is at 100% occupancy in our 7 offices, including the warehouse. Always a bit of good news. We have 2 tenants under 3-year agreements, and recently one of them renewed the warehouse space with a new 3-year lease. That'll start January 1, 2024. They're on their 3rd term or the 7th year with ORCAA. The second tenant that we've had also on a 3-year lease, they've been with us since 2015. So, you know, the good news is they're staying with us. The remaining tenants, they're all on 1-year lease agreements. We've not heard any indication of movement. So yay on that end. But, you know, a little background on our diverse tenant population is we have had and we currently have tenants that actually start their entrepreneurship here at ORCAA. It's kind of exciting. You know, you get to see their growth of their sole proprietorship, witness their expansion of their businesses. You know, the bad news is, of course, they move on because, well, the good news is they're moving on because they're expanding their business. They're growing. They need bigger accommodations to support their businesses. So to me, that's a good thing. And, you know, we are definitely helping those who would not be able to find rentals, which that's what we've been facing with some of these folks approaching us. So we work with them. So it's really nice working with the tenant population. You know, massage therapist, photographer, no more dark rooms or film developing here. You know, bookkeeping to IT services. So it's a diverse tenant population. That's always great news. And at the beginning of the meeting, Jeff did discuss, you know, we have a finance committee meeting scheduled for next month, January 10th. It's definitely going to be a full agenda with the second quarter financial report, the budget amendment, and possibly a 3-year budget forecast, a full agenda. And then lastly, thank you for approving our policies and procedures manual, specifically that purchasing policy piece. Thank you, thank you. So any questions
Questions for Lynn?
Comments?
Thanks for the good work.
All right. Thank you for your support.
Jeff.
Okay, well, as you've heard, there's a lot going on. I'd say particularly think around the personnel and hiring front, at least for me and a few others. So you heard from Mike about Aiden Palm, our new compliance manager, starting on January 1st. So that's really exciting. Of course, with Mark's departure, Tiffany's departure, there's just kind of a lot of movement happening. Back in September, I updated the finance committee and the full board on the plan for dealing with these upcoming departures. And I'd say now we're very much in the middle of all of those things. So with Mark's departure, I appointed Jennifer DeMay, the engineering supervisor. So she's the acting engineering manager until we fill the new compliance and engineering manager. So you probably remember back in September, I talked about taking advantage or using the opportunity of Mark's departure and Robert's pending departure to combine those two manager positions into one. And so been out for recruiting that position for since early November. And we've got it's taken a while, but we've got some candidates, and so planning on moving forward with those interviews early January. And then Lynn talked about the timing of the financial specialist, hoping to have both of those positions filled by early February. Let's see, and so I mentioned that Jennifer was the acting engineering manager, and so she's the agency PE now, essentially with Mark's departure. So she's the one that's reviewing and stamping Lauren's and Aaron's permits. But Aaron is also a PE, so we've got some redundancy in our ability to stamp permits, which is always good. Let's see. Let me just say that one of the reasons, initially we weren't getting a lot of applications to our positions despite our efforts to get them out as many different places as we can. But earlier, I think about 3 weeks or so ago, 4 weeks ago, worked with Carolina. So thank you for your help in getting ORCAA's positions posted on the Thurston County government jobs site. I think that's helped to give us a little bit more visibility. So thank you for that. Cool. Let's see, other things wanted to mention. State implementation plan update. So Dan and Robert and I have had a couple meetings with the Department of Ecology. A state implementation plan, or a SIP, is essentially a big bureaucratic document that essentially tells the EPA how the state is going to maintain air quality standards, and specifically stay keep maintaining the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And so some of ORCAA's regulations are included in the SIP, including our recreational fire rule. And so when we changed our local rule to remove it, that meant that the state implementation plan is out of date. So we're working with Ecology to put together a submittal to the EPA to update the SIP. So bureaucratic process. It's something that Ecology actually leads. That they will lead the public comment period. They will lead the hearing, but it is something that Ecology is involved in, or I'm sorry, that ORCAA is involved in. Dan is lead here at ORCAA, but we'll have more information on the timing of that, but there could be some public outreach kind of January, February timeframe on that. So let's see, other things. Of course, we're getting ready to head into a short legislative session. So there doesn't, and again, since it's a short session, there's not supposed to be a lot of policy bills. You've probably been seeing in the media, there's likely to be some climate related stuff, specifically related to the Climate Commitment Act. So we'll see what happens there. Bills are starting to drop. And so again, looking at the air quality related things, for instance, saw one example of a bill that would require Ecology to set up a program to provide grants related to replacing gasoline-fired outdoor lawn equipment, basically replacing it with batteries for leaf blowers and mowers and other things. And so kind of following that with interest, board members who have been on the board for a while probably remember that ORCAA has at times had efforts to change out, like our wood stove change outs. I think we replaced gas mowers with electric mowers. And so who knows, will be kind of interesting to see how this bill, what happens with this legislation, and then what the potential implications for ecology, but then local air agencies is going to be. The other thing that I've been tracking and actually participated in a couple stakeholder meetings is related to House Bill 1554, which was, might remember, I talked a little bit about it last session, which was put forward by Representative Dolio here in LD 22, related to aviation fuel and the fact that aviation fuel still contains lead, and it's frankly, it's the biggest exposure to lead in some communities. And so there's a desire to reduce lead exposure, get lead out of aviation fuel. The early versions of the bill had a big role for local air agencies, which had some conversations with Representative Dolio about that, and we got removed. I mean, we've got an interest in it and certainly want to do anything we can to promote reducing lead exposure, but it didn't make sense to have a big role for local airs in that. And so tracking that closely just to kind of see what happens when, because I think the bill is going to be refiled likely when session gets going again. So I'll be tracking things. If you hear about any legislation that you're interested in that has an air quality implications, please let me know. I know I think our January board meeting is just before the start of session, but happy to track things if you hear anything that you're interested in or that might be of interest. Let's see. And then the last thing I'll mention, I did say, I think in September or October, that I was interested in meeting with you all individually, just because I haven't had a lot of contact with many of you outside of these meetings. I've reached out to a few, but I haven't gotten as far on that as I had hoped with everything else going on. But it is still my intention to reach out and to schedule some individual meetings over the coming months, just so that I can hear about how things are going, what you're hearing about ORCAA, if there's from your constituents, from your colleagues, and if there's anything that I need to be aware of. So look for those emails, but I think that's it for me, unless there's any questions on anything that I've gone over or
John,
anything else.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for all that, Jeff. I'm glad you're staying busy. I don't know if you came here and thought maybe you need to stir up stuff or what, because yeah. Two things. One, the airplane lead business, and you said maybe it's not something we want to get involved in. Isn't the lead for airplanes impact a lot of the small aircraft out at the
Yes, so it's the fuel that's the gasoline that powers piston aircraft. And so we're not talking SeaTac or for jets. This is just the general aviation. And there have been some measurements. So back like 10, 12 years ago, when EPA lowered the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for lead, Ecology did some studies at a couple airports, one in King County, one in Snohomish County, that had some of the highest levels of general aviation traffic, and still found the lead levels relatively low relative to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And so, but EPA did recently release what they call as an endangerment finding on lead, and that's basically going to trigger further action. I know the FAA is looking closely at it, and so there's a lot of movement to reduce lead from aviation fuel. One of the challenges is the infrastructure requirements so airports have to install additional fuel tanks for different kind of fuel, for the lead-free fuel. And so I think Representative Dolio is looking at perhaps getting some resources to help airports like the Olympia Airport. I think I saw in their budget that they did have some money for some fuel infrastructure in their current budget. So there's a lot happening, and so I'm certainly tracking it, but the initial version of the bill had responsibility for local airs to to put together a reports to the legislature on things, and it's just much more. It makes more sense for DOT for WashDOT to be tracking this because they're the real experts then, rather than local airs. But certainly am interested in reducing lead exposure however we can.
Yeah, I just think it'd be good for us where it's appropriate to speak to that's part of the air, and we watch all kinds of air or pollution, yes, so forth.
Absolutely. I've met with Representative Dolio, and again, there's another stakeholder meeting tomorrow afternoon, so she knows that. Yeah, so I think she knows where ORCAA and other locals stand on this in terms of being supportive of the effort broadly.
Yeah, because it certainly does impact the air in areas, not just in Washington. I'm just talking in general, where there's a lot of small aircraft and a lot of people, that's their hobby, to fly. So they've tracked and found that it makes a difference in the air quality. The other thing I wanted to mention is on this making a transition away from gas being used by maintenance crews in their blowers and their mowers and all of that kind of thing. That's a really important thing. And so I think us as city leaders, I've been harping on that at Tumwater, that we need to make that transition. We're talking about transitioning to electric cars and getting all the charging stations and doing all that. And the amount of pollution from the maintenance being done in cities with gas equipment is very high. So, and it is going to just be a transition process, because you just don't go out and replace all of that. So I'm to encourage Tumwater to get started on it and start getting that in the budget to make the transition away from that.
If you're interested, it's House Bill 1868 that was pre-filed. If you're wanting to check and see what the status of that is, if you want to follow it.
Okay.
And just to kind of add on to Joan's thing quick before I go to Robin, I've seen some social media chatter that's reminded me that the science around those small engines and their lack of controls for pollution is counterintuitive compared to what we get out of our cars. And I just wondered, I think this one's going to get a lot of media exposure. And so I think it would be a good idea, if we don't already have a landing page on our website about internal combustion engines and their emissions and the leading science. That's one way I think we can help, just helping people understand that they don't have, computerized emissions controls and catalytic converters on their lawnmowers. So, Robin?
I was curious. I had two questions. First off is the effort to remove lead from aviation fuel, does it make sense to have it be connected to the HEAL Act? Because I know DOT, that's something that they're standing up a huge effort around implementation of the HEAL Act, and being thoughtful about the way that development and transportation impacts communities. So it seems like there's that connection there. Maybe they're already tying it to the HEAL Act, which I think comes with a lot of funding mechanisms. Yeah,
that's certainly part of the discussion. So there's a lot of focus, and the stakeholder group that has been put together certainly includes Puget Sound Clean Air, folks from the lower Duwamish, from the Duwamish neighborhoods near the King County Airport or Boeing Field. Again, I think that's mostly jets, but anyways, so yes, I believe that equity is certainly part of the discussion. I don't know how explicitly it's tied to the HEAL Act, but certainly the idea of exposure in these overburdened communities is certainly something that's being talked about.
Good.
What is the other?
Yeah, what's the HEAL Act, real quick?
Yeah,
it stands for the Healthy Environment for All. I think it was passed by the legislature, in 2021 or maybe 2020. I can't remember, but it basically environmental justice related. It set up an environmental justice council it includes ecology and commerce, state health. Robin, you might remember, you might know more about it, but it basically puts a lot in motions at a statewide level for looking at overburdened communities, environmental justice, that kind, and other related topics.
Considering how development and pollution from development in the transportation sector impacts communities, because right. There are lots of reasons why people live where they live and the historical reasons behind that. We had a presentation on it during a Thurston Regional Planning Council meeting a few months ago. So I don't remember the details, but I remember the broad strokes.
Yeah. And that some of that, Robin's come up a lot with freeways and with roads, and as we're expanding, and it's just obvious that if you live near an airport or next to a freeway or whatever, which are often, poor income, low income people or right. people of color and so forth. So, yeah. And so that's why I think that some of this, the small airplanes and paying attention to the lead in that gas is really, really important. And I brought up the gas blower thing because I want to go back to council and be able to say, well, ORCAA thinks this is important too. to the city council. No, but I think we'll start moving it at least inch by inch toward.
Go ahead, Robin.
The one other thing I wanted to bring up with this group is something that got discussed during our Thurston Board of Health meeting yesterday. We had a presentation from Dr. Wheat, who I think is associated with the UW Medical Center, and he talked about and is urging the Board of Health to develop a plan for extreme heat events. We had the heat dome in 2021, and about 156 people passed away from heat stroke or heat-related illnesses, and that's not the true number that were likely impacted by that. So calling on the Board of Health to come up with a plan for making sure people have places to shelter from extreme heat events. I'm curious because I think during the summer, Odell did share some information about what happens to air quality when we have extreme heat events. I'm guessing nothing good, but I'm just wondering if there are any opportunities for partnership if the Board of Health is going to be working on something like that, and if it's coming up in other counties.
Question.
Well, I mean, so, and Odell, please chime in if you'd like. I mean, I think it's complicated. I mean, so air quality will often get worse during high heat events. I mean, it can generate more ozone, but it's complicated. But certainly I would say that ORCAA would be happy to, if County Board of Health is working on this, to chime in as we can, and be part of the discussion, to chime in as our expertise would support that effort.
So I just wanted to say, for our purview of air quality related issues, and I'm not sure if this is where you were going, but we have talked in the past about clean air shelters for people that don't have, that are living in homes that maybe don't have good ventilation, or they don't have HEPA filters, or the air quality in the home, there's too much indoor air or outdoor air making it into the house. But there are some problems with that, as for warm shelters or cool shelters, you can certify that you have air conditioning or you have a source of heat. For clean air shelters, we don't have air monitors proving that a spot is cleaner. We put a purple air in the office here at ORCAA, and I can show the data, outside versus inside, but for most places we don't have that. So you can't, and I don't know, maybe Jeff chime in here, but we've talked about it in some other groups that I'm with, is you can't tell somebody that something is a clean air shelter without showing that the air is actually cleaner in the shelter. So I think we've run into some problems with trying to provide that kind of information to the public, and staying away from that, because we can't just say, oh, go to your library, because we don't know that the air is cleaner in that library. I mean, it's cooler, sure, or it's warmer, but definitely the cleaner is a little bit harder to prove or even show. So,
That makes sense.
So if I could weigh in, this is Dan. This has been discussed with the Northwest Communicators Group, and we have a lot of representatives from health departments, State Department of Health from both Idaho and Washington are there. And I know we talked about this when I was up in Port Townsend early in the year, talking about the Smoke Ready Week with the Jefferson County Public Health folks and Caitlin Kelly from State Department of Health. A lot of times during these heat events, we also see wildfire smoke events because they occur the same times a year a lot of times. So we have communications issues of telling people to stay indoors and filter their air to get away from the smoke, but then having the temperatures outside being 90, 95, and people want to open up their windows and doors and blow their fans around. So doing things like
which is the worst thing. Yeah, the air quality or the heat.
So having cooling shelters and avoiding Odell's issues of calling them clean air shelters is one thing, but by working cooperatively with the health departments, we're trying to make sure that those cooling shelters at least have proper filtration. So we may not be able to say we have monitors, we know this is cleaner air, but we can say, well, that library does have MERV 13 filters on their HVAC system. Yeah. And so it is an ongoing process, but I'm glad to hear there's interest, and it's something we've been working on of trying to coordinate with health departments on the cooling shelters, because a lot of times they're also clean air shelters, even though we can't call them that.
Thank you.
Good question. I sat through a presentation to the State Transportation Commission yesterday, and Rad Cunningham from Department of Health was talking about all these mapping tools they have that are really related to the last couple of questions. And they had like clean air and heat and smoke and lifespan and all these different things kind of to that environmental justice perspective. It was a presentation about equity. So I just wanted to put that bow on this conversation. There's a lot happening, and it might be a good place for us to learn some more. So, cool. Okay, anything else for Jeff? Okay, good of the order. Anything for the good of the order? I'm dropping in the chat 2 links that I'd like all of you to check out. So the State Department of Commerce currently has a really good solar program, including a storage-ready technical assistance that you can get for free before you try to get your solar grants, and then try to get a grant for the storage and the solar at the same time. I have a friend that's working at Commerce. They're trying to get this program, these links out to all of the governments and nonprofits, particularly in the rural parts of the state that they can. So if anybody has a government building that has some space for, semi-trailer size storage batteries, you might think about it. And then also wanted to put a note. I mentioned earlier a semi joke in the recognition of Mark around I lost the words around what do you keep asking us about, Greg?
Biochar.
Biochar. There you go. Thank you. And so last week I was at the Economic Forecast Expo in Thurston County for 5 counties, and they were talking about the Lewis County hydrogen facility. And the sort of fascinating thing for me is I'm curious where if that's going to be a major source that ecology will recommend, because I think we want to watch that really close and make sure we provide comment around air quality in our airshed in that project. I did not realize that all of that hydrogen will be made by burning wood waste. And so they've done an analysis of 75 miles around the Trans Alta mine. And my numbers aren't right, but it's like something like 600 million dry board feet within 75 miles of the Trans Alta plant. And so I want to make sure we're watching it, but I also really want to learn about that science so we can understand the hydrogen manufacturing process as it relates to wood waste and kind of the controls that are in place. Because I think if that's, if that system comes into play, there's going to be one in our region too. And I just think that it's really important that we pay attention. On top of that, Lewis County has a really cool energy coalition they pulled together, and they have found a manufacturer for hydrogen fuel cars and a manufacturer for hydrogen fuel mining trucks that they're working to bring to that same facility. And so I think there will be a lot of, similar to the conversations we're hearing in Grays Harbor, like industrial growth in some of our more rural counties in this economy. That's great for the economy, but also really important that we're watching the changing technologies and understanding them as the regulator. So I don't want to make this meeting too much longer, but I know I've stimulated a couple of comments. So I'll go Greg, and then Robin, maybe you can lift your comment from chat.
Yeah, I think the hydrogen is really exciting, and I think Robin's right. That is gray hydrogen, and I thought there were more facilities that kind of on the coattails of that Lewis County project, including one in Olympia and Clallam County and 5 regional electrolysis facilities. But I think it is, you're right, something that we should absolutely follow as it develops, and also push them to I thought it was green hydrogen, but blue hydrogen, whatever it's called. That's really just clean electricity. If you've got, BPA electricity or a public utility and a good source of clean water, that's, I think, all you need, really. So it's really exciting.
I think you captured some of Robin's comments in that. And so that's just something to throw out. I think that when we're talking about our work plan next month, it would be good to look at whether we can get some experts to come and educate us, because I'm great until there's a science question, and I don't even know where to point you to look. So okay, anything else for the good of the order? Sorry to be long-winded today. Jeff, did you have something?
Oh, I was just gonna, we can certainly reach out to Southwest Clean Air and figure out what's, because obviously they will be very involved in permitting this facility, the TransAlta location. So we can figure out what they're doing and a little bit more about the facility.
Yeah, and maybe that statewide infrastructure plan that Greg was referencing, so we can see where it might play into our region. Cool. Thank you. All right, hearing no further business before the Olympic Region Clear Air Agency, we are adjourned. Take care, everyone. Have a happy holidays. See you in the new